It can provoke some negative thoughts, maybe a little bit of rage, I don't know. Like, what in the world is happening? But even though anger feels like it's spreading around the country like a virus, the truth is everyone is looking for unconditional love. When we hear a new story about race or discrimination, it can create a real surge in negative energy in me. I know about me, maybe in you too. And then something in me says, oh, I hope they get what they deserve. Well, that's cause and effect. That's nothing I have to worry about. But the question in my mind is, what they're saying really true? Whether they're trying to stir up trouble or what, is it really true? And the answer is, are they really looking for unconditional love? And the answer is, yeah. You know, from childhood, we may be carrying some negativity. I don't know about you, I didn't have the perfect childhood. I had a good childhood, but some people have had a pretty horrible childhood. And we can carry this anger along with us, and it raises its head every once in a while. With some anger, we're still holding on to some negativity. And it's at work in our subconscious mind, even though we don't realize it consciously. It's there, it's settling there, waiting to be ignited. Some people say, well, they were my parents. They should have known better. They should have never treated me like this. But this kind of drama coming from an adult is a child drama. When the adult doesn't understand the predicament of every person in overcoming anger. We want to blame. We want to say they were the greatest obstacle in whatever we were wanting to do. But you know what that is? That's spiritual arrogance. Now, arrogance isn't a word you hear here very often, but I'm glad to bring it forth this morning, because to think I'm right and you're wrong, especially when it's our parents, it's pretty arrogant, because we're saying there's a double standard. You weren't looking for love. You didn't know how to give love. But that's all they knew. That's all they knew how to do. They were doing the best that they could. And we see these negative behaviors in other people, and we very quickly come to judgment about them, wondering, are they looking for love? I don't think they're going to get it that way, but they could be. And yes, honestly, they are. So millions of people around the world are crying for love today. That, I believe, is very true. The trick about unconditional love, though, you have to give it to experience it. You can't just call it in. You have to give unconditional love to know how it feels, to know how to experience it. And once we experience it, now compassion wells up. Once we experience compassion, or unconditional love, compassion wells up. We start to have a new way to look at our past, to look at how our parents were raised. That's how they learned from the people that took care of them. Now we can have compassion for that. And so for the incidents that we see around the country, and even in Redding and around our neighborhoods, we can have compassion because those negative behaviors are striving to get love, and it's a misguided emotion. I read an article some time ago about ISIS, that they have not learned to accept love. They've never received love, which makes it almost impossible for them to give love if you don't even know what it is. It does make it possible for them to kill people without even thinking about it. And so in my prayers during the week, I include them. I include all the people that call themselves part of ISIS. And I send them love, because how else are they going to learn? How else are they going to touch that? And if it can touch them deeply, then they can turn around and give love. So that's one of the things I've learned about love, is I have to give it to experience it. Ernest Holmes suggested that we create one big blanket of forgiveness and wrap the world in it. And in that big blanket is pure love. In her book, True Refuge, Tara Brach, we've been using her book lately, writes that of all the emotions, anger is part of our survival toolkit. It's part of our toolkit. It lets us know when somebody's invading our boundaries. It lets us know when somebody's trying to hurt us or something's been done wrong. But if we start to live with ongoing anger, it changes quite a bit. It becomes habit. And the habit of anger lies in the background of our mind, lies in our subconscious mind. And it's impacting our life every day. If we're holding on to anger, we're being impacted every day. Habitual anger is bad for our health. It's bad for our bodies. Our cells don't like it. They can't operate in a healthy, natural way. And it's also the cause of war. Anger at others that we don't understand. In the mid to late 1800s, there was a group of very intelligent people like Ralph Waldo Emerson, Thoreau, and many others, and they looked at religion at that time, and they had a new idea about it. And they were called the Transcendentalists because they created this new way of looking at spirituality and religion. They said it centers really on personal responsibility, where at that time in a more fundamentalist philosophy, everybody was a sinner. But they saw everyone as a child of God, that we're all in this together. And so it was coined New Thought because it was a new thought. And it became very popular because at the core is there is goodness in every person, and the best way we can be is self-reliant. Reliant on ourselves. That's when we give the best to life. They also believed every person is in the oversoul, has an oversoul, which is God. We're part of the oversoul of God. It's all oneness. Everything exists in oneness, and we are part of that. So eventually the transcendentalist philosophy got picked up by many people, and it was changed in varying degrees, and it formed out of that Unity, our little Unity ministry here in town. Unity is a worldwide ministry. It created Christian Science, divine science, and our name, religious science. And it's taught in our textbook, The Science of Mind, by Ernest Holmes and many of his other books. So what we teach here is clearly the tools of personal responsibility. With personal responsibility, we realize we're always at choice in every minute. And if we can train our mind to catch that anger when it hits us quickly, if we can train our mind to catch that, we can interrupt it with what's really true. What is really true? You know, anger can become such habit energy that it really does impact us. And if we can direct our mind at that moment when anger appears, we're going to retain our sanity in this world. Now, I definitely want to do that. Some days I wonder if I can. But sanity and goodness are what I want to retain in life. And so I have to look at every news story from a different perspective. It's the cry of unconditional love. One method of catching anger is on that sheet in your program that says, principles to apply. Practices to apply science of mind principles. And the number 5 there is mindfulness. Mindfulness is the practice of paying attention in the present moment, objectively observing the behavior, attitudes, and beliefs of ourselves and others. Mindfulness. It's taught in all Centers for Spiritual Living. It's paying attention to what's happening, not judging. It's just paying attention. And if we feel a little stress with the news or what we see happening, go to mindfulness. Just be aware, because when we're in that moment of mindfulness, we're totally safe. Like right now, we're totally safe. We exist within this whole blanket of the love of God. We can't really get overwhelmed by life when we're in that moment of mindfulness. And it's also something you can do in Costco if you're in one of those long lines at Costco. Just be mindful of the people around you. What's in your cart? What's the lighting like? What's the air like? Just be mindful in the present moment where you're totally safe and totally loved. Another way, a place of doing this is if, as you get older, you go to the doctors a lot. Doctors' waiting rooms, perfect place for mindfulness. To see all the other people that are there for their own personal healing and just be with that. There's growing research that the more we do this thing called mindfulness, we experience less anxiety and stress and less judgment. How can we judge others when we're just being mindful in the world of God? We experience less depression, but we also, I was surprised, greater body satisfaction because we're not in that anger mode or that revengeful mode or that sad mode. Another method of deactivating anger is forgiveness, and that's also on our list here. It's number 8. Forgiveness is the active practice of compassion, the process of releasing perceived hurts, judgments, grievances, which allows us to see the presence of Spirit in everyone. Louise Hay, I don't know if you know her, but she wrote a very powerful book called You Can Heal Your Life, and it's all about forgiveness. She had one of those very, very, very difficult lives. She held a lot of resentment about her parents for many years because they abused her so badly, both mental, physical, and sexual abuse. She ran away from home at age 15 and took a job as a waitress. And she attracted men who she didn't think much of herself, and they didn't either. So it was a pretty sad situation. She was so starved for love and attention. She got pregnant when she was 16 and gave the baby up for adoption. But then she moved to New York. She thought there's got to be something beyond where I am. And she became a high fashion model. She didn't even realize how beautiful she was. But she did extremely well there in the fashion industry. By chance, one Sunday, she went to a church of religious science. And wow, I know how powerful that is when I walked in here the first time. She got the message. It's time to pay attention to your life. So she started reading everything, just like I did, every book I could get my hands on by Ernest Holmes and other beautiful spiritual people. Even Emerson's Essays is another really great one. She wanted to read everything she could find out about healing her mind and attitude. It wasn't long before she became a licensed practitioner, and I didn't know that really until I was reading that this week. Then she wanted to be a minister. You know, it's like boom, 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 got to do that. And they didn't have ministerial training at that time, so she went and took transcendental meditation at Maharishi's International University in Iowa. She had to do something spiritual. So then she moved back to New York, and she was starting to write a little book about her observations of the metaphysical cause for physical illness, the mind-body connection. And at that time, as she was investigating that, she was diagnosed with vaginal cancer. And she reflected on that. Yeah, my bringing up all this anger and resentment when I was raped at the age of 5. But now understanding the mind-body connection, she realized she had to let go of resentment or her physical body would continue to deteriorate. But she decided to go one step further. She went back to how her parents were raised. And she got all these little shreds of stories from her parents and realized they had a horrific bringing up. And so what they did to her was the best that they knew how. Now with that comes compassion. They were doing the best they can. So she was able to turn her resentment into compassion for her parents. But she also went into therapy, did a lot of spiritual mind treatment, did a lot of spiritual practices, and 6 months later, there was no cancer left in her body. 6 months. Then she finally published her book, Heal Your Body, and it became very popular very quickly, and in New Thought circles in LA, where New Thought really took off, she was really a wonderful speaker, and so she had a lot of opportunity to go to California and other places and speak. And she was building up her clientele for practitioner work, and it was really a great time. And so she bought a home. And then her mother, who was 90, blind, almost deaf, fell and broke her back. She was helpless. So Louise said, hey, move in with me. Move in with me. Let's clean up this old garbage between us. And she did. So now the child that was so abused is now taking care of the mother who was the abuser, but who is now a helpless child. By the time her mother died, they were best friends, and they were free of the past. And beginning with this one little book on healing, Louise made a publishing business called Hay House. I'm sure you know of it. It's huge. All the most positive books you could ever want, all from her little book that started on healing. So during childhood, we learn love from our parents, but it's also good to look back and see how they learned to love or not, how they interacted with us. Because we may be, as adults, unconsciously recreating the emotions we had if we were not loved very much as children. We may be inviting people like Louise did when she first started dating men because she did not have any self-worth. And so it's important to look at that every once in a while and say, am I recreating a sad part of my life? Unconditional love really feels like it's fairly rare. It's up to us, though, to kickstart it ourselves. Some time ago, I shared that my brother and I, with my brother, when we grew up, we were only 2 children. I often felt sad because I thought my parents really loved him so much more than me. I had to go to Catholic school, and he got to go to public school. Every fall when school started, he got to buy a whole new wardrobe, and I only had to wear uniforms. There was something in my mind that just wasn't right with that. And a lot of other things I made up, I'm sure. But when our dad died and my brother turned 16, my mother bought him a motorcycle so he could feel manly. And I'm like, what's up with this? What is up with this? Of course she was feeling sad he didn't have Dad around. But later, before she died, she gathered all the family pictures and she put them in 2 albums, one for Mike and one for me. And every picture, it wasn't him or me, it was us. It was the 2 of us. And it really shook me up. I had made this story up, and it wasn't true. My brother and I continue to be very close. I talk to him every Sunday evening, and we talk for a long time. Paul says, how can you talk to him so much? About what? I said, the world, life, joy, everything. We just talk and talk and talk. It's really wonderful. So the predicament, even for Mike, because he's still single, very leery of women. He got hurt once, and it was like, that's it, done with that. Is wanting unconditional love, and I think that's one thing I do give to him, totally unconditionally. I just love him up. He works as an emergency business, what do you call it, where you go and take people to hospitals and do all that. And he's the most, one of those. He's the most loving person. He even finds out what their favorite music is and brings CDs or brings music to play on the way. He'll say, have you been to the park lately? And he'll take him on a ride through the park. He's just an angel. But for many years, it wasn't like that. So I'm really glad it is now. So Tara Brach, in this book, True Refuge, she has a process that you might consider when you want to shift from blame or judgment to forgiveness and unconditional love. And the acronym is RAIN, R-A-I-N. And she says, first, bring to mind that issue, that moment. What words were said? Who was there? Feel it. And then recognize what's happening inside you as you do that. What's your body telling you? That anger is still living in your body. It's still helping to create what you're focused on, which could be resentment and anger. So she says, get to that point and then just say, I'm allowing it to just be. I'm just allowing it to be, and just breathe it. Because we know it's not happening now. It's an old, old memory. Then investigate it. Why is this still calling my attention? Why is it still there jerking at me? Why is it clawing at me? Why does it keep coming up? Where do you feel it in your body? I know people with a lot of anger. Louise Hay says the anger settles in your liver. And sometimes when people come to me for a prayer, a treatment, and they have an issue, and it has to do with their liver, I often say, would you want to know what Louise Hay says about that? If they're courageous, they say yes. They've had a lot of anger in your life. Oh, yeah. They know it immediately. Immediately. So we're at that point. Where is it settling in my body? Why do I let it be there? Can I believe I don't need it? Can I just breathe through it? Maybe I have to ask, what does that anger want from me today? Because there's nothing you're going to do about the past. You have to heal it today. Then she says, place your hand over your heart and send your body unconditional love. She says, rest in the natural awareness that you are loved by God. Just rest in it. Rest in the awareness that everywhere present is God's love for you. That's why you were created, through God's love. So in closing, thank you, Judy, I'd like to leave you with some healing words from Louise Hay. In the infinity of life where I am, all is perfect, whole and complete. I'm always divinely protected and guided. It's safe for me to look inside myself. It's safe for me to look into the past. It's safe for me to enlarge my viewpoint of what I have experienced, to enlarge my viewpoint. Because I'm far more than my personality, than the past, present, or future. I choose to rise above my personality problems and recognize the magnificence of my being and all beings. I'm totally willing to learn to love myself and to offer love to all, because the truth is now, all is well in my world. And so it is.